Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Golden Opportunities Coaching YouTube channel and the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel. Obviously, this is the Impact review for the 3rd of February 2022. Obviously, Impact is a struggling brand. They try, and sometimes they do good things, but a lot of the trope that's there exists because a lot of times this brand ends up being something that's there because they have funding for it, not because they have a long-term plan. However, there's also some good things along the way too. Anyway, ROH World Champion Jonathan Gresham is in action tonight among others. Black Taurus defeats Raj Singh on BTI. Again, don't understand the BTI thing. Matt Cardona defeats digital media champion Jordana Grace to win the title. Cardona challenged Grace to the match in previous weeks. Story of the match: Grace is obviously one of the strongest members of the roster, but Cardona is too strong for her, and she's going to work smarter throughout. Grace keeps getting on Cardona, but can't bring him down with shoulder tackles or slams. Cardona, however, uses his size and I guess power advantage there. I'm not a fan of intergender matches. I will never be, just because I don't think they look logical unless it's two really small people. In other words, a guy who's the size of a woman. I think that can work in rare occasions. Anyway, Cardona feels uncomfortable with hurting Grace. Grace gets frustrated. Eventually, Cardona comes back, has enough controls the match, slamming Grace enough to keep her down, and follows up with a concentration until Grace hits something and Cardona retaliates. Basically, the match is a back and forth. Grace makes a comeback with a spine buster, then catches Cardona by surprise enough to bring Cardona down and allow Grace to get some offense. Grace then manages to point some targeting to Cardona's leg, keeping him down, following up with a running boot and Vader bomb for near fall. Grace attempts the Grace driver but can't get it locked in, so Cardona takes her down with a big boot and then hits a reboot for the 2 count. Cardona then comes back to the floor, lands next to the title belt, and tries to bring it into the ring. Referee takes it away, hits the radio silence to win the title. Um, anyway, I guess it's fine if you want to do this type of story, but I'm not a fan. Cardona leads him to cheat, then he wins. We go backstage where William Morrissey attacks most of the learning tree on the path to find Myers, VSK, and Dice. He destroys everybody in his pathway. Morrissey complains to Scott D'Amore about being stopped by security. D'Amore tells him that he can get Myers next week in no DQ match, but he'd have to relax. D'Amore makes the mistake of telling him that Moose has been sent to his hotel to avoid problems at the arena. Jonah defeats Crazy Steve with Decay after Jonah defeats Swinger. This is the next follow-up. Power versus Speed Squash. Crazy Steve gets some offense in early. Tries to overpower Jonah. Jonah manages to get on top. Jonah then goes for strikes, but Jonah gets the hands on Steve, slams him around, senton finishing Steve off with the tsunami. Post-match, Jonah goes for the second tsunami, but Black Taurus steps in to make that stop. It could be an interesting feud between the two of them. Backstage, Gia Miller interviews Matt Cardona about him attacking Grace. Cardona then says that's the biggest day since winning the title. Miller asks, what about Chelsea Green would think about his actions? He insisted he told her to ask Jonathan Gresham what it's like to be married to a loser. Madison Rain told Caleb that she will soon be tag team champion with Dashwood returns. Jesse McKay and Cassie Lee approach them and gives Caleb a gift. The implication being that the inspiration may be trying to recruit Caleb to join them and drop the influence after Rain's mistreatment of him. ROH champion Jonathan Gresham defeats Steve Mclean in a non-title match after losing Pure Rules match. This is the follow-up. Mclean tries to rush Gresham at the start of the match, but Gresham quickly turns things around and starts going after the leg. Mclean then uses size advantage to get some offense, but Gresham keeps him down, out-wrestles him continually. Gresham then locks on the headlock, and not even a backdrop slam breaks that up. Mclean then tries to flip Gresham over and tries to get to the rope break, but Gresham then keeps finding his way into the headlock, forcing him into pins that work. Mclean then is frustrated. Eventually, Mclean shocks and snaps on Gresham, gets into the ropes, and after the rope break, Gresham is released. Mclean then is now in control, works over Gresham's back, has a bunch of offense, and slams Gresham, but soon tries to lock on the crab. Gresham then easily reverses it and regains some momentum. Mclean then relies on back elbows, bringing him down. Gresham then continues the fight. Both men get into a striking battle with Gresham and then manages the offense, but then can't bring him down. Mclean then eventually manages to catch Gresham with a moonsault. After that, he hits a power slam. The fight continues, with Mclean then getting a hold of Gresham on the ropes and striking him beyond the 5 count, getting himself disqualified. After the bell, Mclean then takes Gresham and hits the crosshair, locking on a crab until Honor No More run down to save Gresham. At this point, he had sided with his other ROH competitors. Gresham did not, however, join the group and instead walked up the ramp on his own. Josh Alexander defeats Vincent with Honor No More. These two men will be the Honor No More Team Impact members at No Surrender. Alexander starts with some momentum, but the rest of Honor No More at ringside, they quickly give this an advantage. Vincent then works over Alexander for most of the match and later has a couple of comebacks, but Vincent would regain control on one way or another, and yet couldn't keep Alexander down even after a red run. Alexander manages to lock on the ankle lock, but has to release it to take out Mike Bennett and Matt Taven at the end of the Honor No More. Surround the rings, Team Impact runs down even the odds, and Alexander focuses on Vincent. Alexander locks on the ankle lock and tapped out Vincent for the win. Decent match if you don't mind all the goofy extra interference. After the match, Kenny King returns to Impact and becomes the 5th man of Honor No More, who'd been lacking a man headed into the pay-per-view. Morrissey arrives at Moose's hotel room, barges in and attacks Moose. They brawl around the hotel room, and this looks goofy. Backstage, Honor No More talked about that they will win the war at the end. Kenny King cut a promo, and then they all tricked into thinking honor existed in wrestling, but they didn't like what they see. Baham defeats John Skyler. This is a basic squash match in the wrong position on the show. Jeer has some height on Skyler, but not the experience. Skyler has the upper hand, hits a clothesline. Jeer then hits flares of offense and a couple clotheslines. Jeer then eventually makes a comeback with a power slam and a springboard elbow, but only gets a 2 count. Jeer then comes back with a corner splash, followed by a second rope spear. They then get the win. Jeer wins his debut, which is, I guess, a good sign overall. After the match, Raj Singh comes out to celebrate with Jeer, but Jeer rejects that. Recap of the Mickie James performance at the Royal Rumble. They actually showed footage of her entrance elimination of Michelle McCool and James' elimination at the hands of Lita. Afterwards, Miller interviews James about her participation. James said she was happy to be able to represent Impact on the Knockouts titles. Tasha Steelz and Savannah Evans interrupts to make fun of her and mocks her. Then we go to Chelsea Green backing up James and challenges Steelz and Evans to a tag match. James then thanks Green for helping her and offers Green a match next week. We get a vignette for Delise Shaw. Marsha Slamovich defeats Casey Lennox. Squash at the hands of Slimovich, takes her down and drops on her and hits a running boot and a back fist and gets a Russian death device driver for the win. Miller interviews Deanna Purrazzo about last week. She storms out Mickie James' speech. Purrazzo says she has no respect for James or what she has to say. It's Purrazzo who raised the division to the point where it would warrant the state of the knockout speech to begin with. She makes an open challenge to either of her titles next week. After the match, Mickie James, Chelsea Green versus OGK, Rich Swann, and Rhino, Brian Myers versus Morrissey for next week. Bullet Club, and by the way, by this point, the show's really dragging. Bullet Club, Jay White, Tamatonga, Tangaloa, and Chris Bay defeat Ace Austin, Madman Fulton, Speedball, Mike Bailey, and Jake Something. Another multi-person match just to get everyone out there. Even before the match, we saw Jake Something didn't trust Austin or Fulton, as well he shouldn't. Match starts with White and Bailey, but White backs him up, tags in Bailey instead. Bailey then hits strong control, but Bay manages to get an irate, tags in White along with the rest of the Bullet Club. They get some offense for a little bit. Jake Something tags in, but Fulton blind tagged himself in. The distraction allows for the rest of the Bullet Club to run over and take them down, but Fulton realigns himself. Austin and Fulton keep Bay in their corner, consistently delaying the tag to Jake Something. Austin then keeps showing off Bailey and Something, and eventually leads to Bay landing a desperation Superman punch, but that doesn't make it all the way to his corner. From Fulton tags in and continued working over Bay, managing to dodge Fulton, but instead of tagging the fresh Something, tags in Austin, who gets taken out quickly. White and Bailey tags in the Great Exchange, and then ends up with Speedball taking down White with kicks and standing Torito. Tangatonga takes over on Austin, but Fulton jumps in and takes him out. Loa then comes in first, only for the Gods of Destiny to take control, hitting a Magic Killer on Fulton and gets 2 count. Austin hits another Magic Killer on Bailey and finally sets up Austin for Bay. Frog Splash. Unfortunately, Austin blocks the splash, but tags in. It doesn't tag in the fresh Something. He leaves himself open for Bay to take him out. Something finally tags himself in and hits the hard way, takes down Bay and Gorillas, but then the numbers game gets too much, and they lose White's Exploder and Bay's Art of Finesse. Good match. After the match, the Good Brothers and Violent by Design jumped at the Bullet Club. Both parties brawled until Bullet Club was taken down, and that closes the show. More clusters just to get people on the show. Not a fan of that, but it is wrestling in 2022. What are you going to do? Anyway, we'll be back with more right after this.